I always say as time goes on, testosterone is getting lower and lower. You know, you can see it in the movies. You can see it just in your day-to-day walking around. So today we got a question from a young buck wanting to know how he can become more masculine. Let's get into it. How can I become more masculine? I have been known as a weak and soft, timid, effeminate man. It's becoming more and more common. I was never really masculine, which I believe to be certain more core masculine values such as stoicism, strength, leadership, self-reliant, and accountability. I was never able to adjust to these core values in my life and to follow through with it. Can I get some practical advice here? Please, please, please don't tell me foolishness of how it's okay to be soft, weak, and emotional as a man, because that led my life down failure and a bitter, wrong path. And I agree 1,000%. The self-awareness there is powerful. At least you're self-aware. The best tip I can say is get in the gym ASAP, immediately. Number one, take responsibility for your actions. You know, as men, we don't have the luxury to not take accountability for actions, because the repercussions of us not taking accountability for our actions and responsibility for our actions is just far greater. So what's the practical example of that? Like, you know, nowadays they say, oh, it's okay if you're out of shape. It's okay if you're fat. It's okay if this and that. No, a man's going to take responsibility. Like, hey, for me, for example, bring it personal to me. At one point, I was eating a tub of yogurt every day. I was literally eating a tub of yogurt like every day, and I gained like 20 pounds. And I was lifting weights. I still had muscle, don't get me wrong, but I had to say, all right, we got to cut that out. I had to take responsibility to get myself to where I want to be, physically, mentally, emotionally. Taking responsibility for your actions. That's the number one thing. And you're already on that path because you have taken responsibility and you want to become more masculine. And you know that, you know, being more feminine has left you in your life in disarray, basically. Don't get me wrong. Women, there's nothing wrong with being feminine, but as a man, you can't be feminine. You know what I'm saying? Because you're a fucking man. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not going to get the same leeway. You don't have the same thing. You know what I'm saying? So that's the first thing, taking responsibility. And the best way you can do it is through having a set of values that you live by. So the samurai, they lived by the Bushido code. You know, the Bushido code basically gave their life the guidelines to live in. You know, that's why things like, one of the reasons that I believe testosterone is on a decline today is because more and more people just don't have a code. You know, in the past, there were more Christians, so they had like a code to live by. The people lived with more religion. So let's say, for example, Muslims, right? Regardless of whatever you believe, you know, Muslims, Christians, Buddhists, they all have a code they live by. You know what I'm saying? They all have a code. Someone like Jesus, right, is a masculine person. You know what I'm saying? Jesus is a masculine person. The Buddha is very masculine. You know, their characteristics are masculine. You know, so having a code that you live by, you know, is one of the main things that will help you automatically have responsibility in your life, you know, and take responsibility for your actions. Because, for example, as a Christian, you know, you're obviously not going to be perfect, but if you do something wrong, you know, you take responsibility for that, and then you try to be better. You know, that's what that's what is taught in the Christian faith. and many faiths, Buddhism, stuff like that. Next, train your body. Training your body is a must. If you're a man and you're trying to be strong in the world, like there's no two ways about it. If you're a man and you're trying to be more masculine, you can't be weak because everyone's trying to take your spot. Everyone's trying to take something from you. Some other man might try to run up in your house and take your life. You know what I'm saying? Take something from you. So as a man, you need to be able to defend yourself, and you need to be a force. That's something that I truly believe. Train your body, whether that's through training martial arts, whether that's through going to the gym, lifting weights. Preferably, I think training martial arts is the best way to do it, because when you train martial arts, you also have a code that you're supposed to live by. If you're learning a real martial art, like jiu-jitsu, taekwondo, karate, the first things you learn on the mat is respect. Those are the first things that you learn before you learn any type of move or how to fight. Even wrestling, you learn discipline, respect, stuff like this. You hop on the mat, you shake your opponent's hand. You hop off the mat, you shake your opponent's hand. You shake the coach's hand. So training your body is also training your mind. And there's multiple ways you could train your body. As you train your body, you automatically become more masculine because you become stronger. Your testosterone comes up. You have more respect for yourself, and you have more respect for others. So especially if you're doing a martial art. So training your body is key if you're trying to become more masculine. You can't be like, imagine someone masculine in your head right now. I guarantee you they aren't like floppy and fat and, not dissing the fat dudes. Like, you could be a fat dude and still hit the gym. You know what I'm saying? But when you think of someone masculine in your head, the first thing that comes up to me is someone who's physically imposing and strong. They're physically strong on the outside. They're probably physically strong on the inside, because it takes a lot of discipline to get your body to that point. It takes a lot of discipline. It takes responsibility. It takes a lot to get your body to the point where you're strong, so you must train your body if you're trying to become more masculine. And as we see the action movies in the past, like Rambo, stuff like this, all the dudes, they were more masculine. They were super jacked, and that's one of the first things that we see. Like, when you think of the movie 300, we think about the Spartans. They were super masculine, right? And they were super strong, and they trained their bodies really hard, So training your body is a must if you're talking about how to become more masculine. Lead with purpose, not emotion. So as a man, if you lead with your emotion, you're going to end up in jail, because as a man, it's not just that, oh, men cry or whatever, this and that. No, you lead. There's many people in jail today, who led with emotion. The most notable story I can bring up is there was a guy who crashed out and flipped out because some other guy complimented his girl on her tattoos. Now, he didn't know that this guy was actually aspiring tattoo artist, and he just literally was obsessed with tattoos and loved tattoos, and he genuinely was complimenting his girl on her tattoos. But he saw it as, oh, you're looking at my girl, blah, blah, blah. So he went over and he got in an altercation with the guy, shot the guy, unalived the guy, and now he's in jail for life, because he couldn't keep his emotions in control. There's many times where, someone crashes out with their emotions and they punch somebody, they get caught up, they kill somebody. Road rage, road rage is a perfect example. That's not masculine. Masculinity is like being stoic, being calm. You know what I'm saying? So leading with purpose instead of emotion. What does that mean exactly? Like, your purpose in life. What is your purpose in life? You know, this is why earlier when I said having guidelines like a religion, for example, helps you become more masculine because you have a purpose, right? Without a purpose, you're just kind of floating in the wind. You know, you might want to crash out and do something crazy, but since you live by these guidelines and you live with this purpose, your emotions get put to the side. You know what I'm saying? So leading with purpose, that's one of the most important things, not emotion. You know, and now stand for your values even when you're alone. Very, very important stuff here. So this is the Bushido code. You know, and when you think about like samurais, they were some of the most masculine people around. You know, even like the Bushido code, they would commit seppuku, which they would take a sword, cut open their intestines, and let it come out because they didn't want to dishonor their code. Now, some people could say, "Oh, that's toxic masculinity," but it's masculinity. You know what I'm saying? Like they live by a code. They live and die by that code. And this is what their code entails. The Bushido code, the 7 virtues: integrity, respect, heroic courage, honor, compassion, honesty, sincerity, duty, loyalty. This is essentially exactly what it is to be a masculine man. You know, like these codes really are extremely masculine. You know, the first one, integrity, be actually honest throughout your dealings with all people. Believe in justice, not from other people, but from yourself. To be to the true warrior, all points of view are deeply considered regarding honesty, justice, integrity. You know, and then ultimately, you know, that's when we look at someone like Jesus, you know, that's exactly what Jesus had. So that's why when I'm talking about like these religions and stuff like that, a lot of them have these virtues instilled in them. So you automatically become more masculine when you're following these religions. Now, you might not always live up to it. You know what I'm saying? You might make mistakes, stuff like that, but you can always go back to these virtues and to these codes that make you more masculine. If you don't have a code to live by, you're just floating, you know, living through your emotions basically, which is not a masculine thing. You know, and you stand on these even when you're alone. Someone like Nelson Mandela, right? Nelson Mandela was alone in that jail cell for years and years and years, but he had his principles and his virtues and the stuff that he believed in, you know, and Nelson Mandela is an extremely masculine man. You know what I'm saying? So going into the next one, the next virtue, which is respect, which we talked about earlier. True warriors have no reason to be cruel. They do not need to prove their strength. Warriors are courageous even to their enemies, courteous even to their enemies. Warriors are not only respected for their strength in battle, but also their dealings with others. So to me, this means, you know, your dealings with others. If you're doing business with somebody, be truthful, be honest with the business. You know, don't try to come back and, you know, scam somebody. That's not masculine. You know what I'm saying? So respect. That's the first thing you learn in martial arts. So as I said earlier, training your body is a key, you know, and you can do it through martial arts. That will make you more masculine automatically because these virtues that you learn, you know, and there's so many of them, you know, but integrity, respect, heroic courage, honor, compassion, honesty, sincerity, duty, loyalty. Those are masculine traits. And that's the Bushido code. You know, protect provide, preserve. Find ways to, and you can protect anything, you know, protect your girlfriend, protect your brother, protect someone weaker than you who's getting bullied, you know, provide. There's multiple ways you could provide. You don't have to be wealthy. You could provide services to the people in your life. You know, you could provide safety to them. You could provide love. You could provide a lot of different things. You know, if you don't have the money to provide, but the idea of starting to provide, because what it means, if you're a man, let's say you have kids, you are the one who needs to protect, provide, and take care of your family unit. You know, if someone breaks into your house in the middle of the night, it's up to you to take care of your family. And as a man, you're the one who is supposed to put your life on the line, you know, because your wife and the kids are going to continue the bloodline, right? So as a man, you need to be able to protect. That's number one. You need to have big balls. You know what I'm saying? Provide for your kids, provide for your wife. You know, that doesn't mean be a simp and just, oh, okay, dear, whatever you want. But no, like, if you have a good woman and you have a strong family, you have a great family, provide for your family, giving them what they need to be successful. Provide for your kids, you know, provide for your wife. You know, that doesn't mean provide for some thought. Like, no, provide for your wife, who is your woman, who is there for you and you're there for her, you know. And finally, persevere. You need to persevere through adversity. You need to persevere through struggles. You need to persevere through, you know, times when you're broke and you need to come through. Like, perseverance is the number one masculine trait. You need to persevere when the chick says, nah, I'm not into you. Go find another chick. You know what I'm saying? Perseverance. These are things that are masculine. And if you're trying to become more masculine, these are the things that you need to do. You know what I'm saying? And that's really it. But you're on the right path already because you have acknowledged these things. Learn to fight.